Okay, so this is the first in a series of webcasts and other technical assistance the department and our partners with DHS are going to be providing around the use of the CANS tool in Wisconsin. We are also a part of the national consortium under the NCTSN grant for Northwestern University, who is building capacity among child welfare professionals and tools to assist with child welfare staff as the use of the CANS is growing among child welfare agencies. So this is the first in a series of 3, but we will be holding additional calls, Adobe Live meetings into next year. We just don't have the dates and topics all planned out yet. But as a part of the process of Wisconsin participating with Northwestern, what we have is the opportunity to work with them to get sort of the tools before other people do and to help them and give them feedback. And so one of the tools that they have provided so far are these videos, and they're in the process of creating some more videos for child welfare based on some feedback that we've already given them and other people have given them. But they've also been developing tools for things like supporting supervisors with the use of the CANS, and we'll be presenting those tools as well in different webcasts or Adobe Live meetings coming in the future. The other thing I just want to let people know about is based on the survey of needs across the state that happened earlier this year, we have developed a couple of different things for the TA plan. So one of the things has to do with the Adobe Live meetings and bringing topics that are relevant that you want to talk about. So if you have ideas, let us know. These first 3 we sort of decided as a group of people who are providing different technical assistance around the CANS what to move forward with, but we're certainly looking for feedback in terms of what are you struggling with, and this is based on sort of topics that you already provided to us in survey results. Then the other thing that we've developed is a case planning training for the use of the CANS for child welfare staff, and we did a pilot group with Northwestern staff in May. And we are going to be rolling that out at the end of this year for a couple of sites, and then we'll probably be doing that into next year as well to help people with their case planning around the CANS tool and helping them create behaviorally stated measurable goals. So I just want to thank everyone for the feedback to date on different areas that they need assistance with, and we are certainly taking all that and hoping everyone finds these upcoming opportunities helpful in your use of the CANS and really sort of building upon what already you have as a foundation. Also, if you have not heard, we are also bringing John Lyons back in November to do some face-to-face trainings. So DHS is having him come on the 6th of November in Wausau. I'm getting head shakes like I got that right. And then DCF is having him come on the 7th in the Dells. So both of those are open for registration. Are you guys full yet? Nope, both of them still have open slots. So if you or a colleague that you know is interested in attending that, please sign up. For the one with DCF, it would be on PDS Online. And for the CSTs, it would be through White Pines. And consulting and something has gone out through DHS for that as well. So what we're going to spend time for the remainder of today on is this presentation. One of the things I will mention, I mentioned it before when no one heard, is we ran into a little bit of a snafu with the Adobe Live meetings that the video may not come through as quickly as the audio comes through. So we ask you to bear with it. We will send you a link as well after the meeting for those who are letting us know they're in participation. We will send you a link afterwards so you can go directly to the videos yourself if you want to share them with staff, or if you want to view them at a later date and time to, in addition to this. So we'll be doing some different videos. And then we're also going to talk about report data, so for case-specific reporting. So in 2 of the videos, you'll see the participants using graphs of progress over time and how they've rated at one point and improved, or areas that still need work. And you'll see the presenter, if you will, with the youth and a foster parent talking through those issues. And in other times where we've showed these presentations, people have asked us, well, that would be really awesome if we had something like that in Wisconsin, if we could do that kind of feedback with people kind of graphically. And actually you can do that. So Jenny Weber is here to talk us through how exactly you do that in SACWIS and how you get at those reports, just to help you know that information. So there's multiple different things to consider about how you use CANS, and we do understand that, and I'm going to start with number 6, we understand that most of you are coming at the CANS as a point of it's a requirement, I have to do it, the state says I have to do it. But we are here today and over the next several months and years to come to help really embed it into practice so that you see it more as something that can inform your work, and help your work with children and families so that it becomes useful to you. We don't want a requirement just to be a requirement. We want it to be helpful to you in helping children get what they need from the system. We are using it at multiple levels within the system already. You know, you guys use it on the case level, and then the department and agencies are using it to inform different administrative decisions, policy changes, etc. If there's interest, we can talk about that at another date, but that's not our focus today. But really, we're going to focus today on how to help move you, your practice, and help it inform what you're doing with clients, and really to embed the information you're learning about trauma experiences into the planning that you're creating for children and their families. A little bit about the NTCSN group. So NCTSN, the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, has provided grants through SAMHSA for different entities to work on bringing trauma-related research-based practices into actual case planning and practice. And so one of those grants was awarded to Northwestern, who has Vanderbilt, Tennessee, Indiana University, the state of Illinois, and us, all working together to sort of help create different tools to increase the use of trauma-informed principles and care and planning practices into child welfare cases. So this is a little background on them. I'm not going to go into a terrible amount of this information, but it's here in case you're interested later. Okay, so here's where we're really going to focus today on, is really the need to fully understand children and what they're bringing to the table. So the idea behind the use of the CANS has to do with giving all of us who are working with children and their families a common language to really talk about what they're bringing to the table, whether it be traumatic experiences or behaviors that they're displaying, so that we can all create a plan together with them to help address what areas of need really are for them. One of the other things that it's really there to help you do, which has been a historical issue specifically in child welfare, is to really take how traumatic experiences are developed into issues for children or problems in adaptation in their normal life. So in some areas we have an overrepresentation, and this is research-based, of children being diagnosed as ADHD. But also in our child welfare system we have a lot of traumatic experiences for children. So we need to make sure that we're not treating a post-traumatic stress disorder for a child, but we're treating it as ADHD. So there's a couple of different areas where those problems have been very historical in child welfare, and by framing the traumatic experiences, it helps us really reflect before we create plans and put plans in place to ensure that, and to really look at whether a traumatic experience a child has has is precipitating as something that looks like a clinical diagnosis of something else, if that makes sense. But we'll talk more about that, and you'll see some of that in the videos. And then really it's a structured way to look at the different needs and make sure that we're connecting on all the different needs areas that a child may have or experience. And it gives us a good way to move forward with treatment planning and with our system, and really to match whatever we're putting in place for the child with their needs. Not us just saying, well, our system has parenting, our system has therapy, we're going to apply those to every case, but rather we're looking at what does that child present to the system and how can we best meet their needs given what they are. All right, this just talks about what the videos are and the clips what you're going to see. So really there are a couple areas that are really critical when you're talking about engagement of children and their family. And I do want to mention before we get started too far into this that one of the common complaints about these videos is that they're from a very clinical perspective. So it's not a caseworker, it is more of a therapist asking. I would just ask you to bear with that as you watch them and think of how you could adapt that. I promise that videos are coming that will be from the caseworker's perspective. They're just not ready today, but they are building them. But I ask you to sort of, parody that with what you do in your work. So anytime we're trying to work at engaging the family, the ideas of the things that you're seeing on your screen, those are really key elements in processing the work together and making sure that the relationship is there in order to effectively make change. Without them joining you in the planning, there's no change. Likely change is not going to happen, or it's not going to be sustainable. So we really want to have, them understand what we see the needs are. Is there agreement on that? And sort of how you move forward on that depends on where the level of agreement is and what the strengths are that they have and what they're bringing to the table. I'll move forward from this one. We're not going to use this part because we're not going to open it up right now. Okay. So part of the goals of the videos are really to just show you some examples of engagement, show you how you can use it as a psychoeducation tool. So remember, when we're talking about things like anxiety or depression or what trauma is, what you'll see in the video is we don't explain it, oh, this is some damage to your brain that happened when this happened to you. You'll see real live examples of how you make that friendly to both children and foster families in this situation. But you could relate this to parents or other types of caregivers and how you might talk about it differently, but you'll still get the idea across to someone and explain what something means in more of a non-clinical way of how you discuss something. And then again, we'll talk about uses of data and actual case planning and how you can do that. Okay, so these are just the number of videos that you'll see. And again, I'll share this with you so you can look at it on your own as well. A little bit about the quote-unquote actors. So they're actors in the sense that they're not talking about specific cases of their own, but they are real people. They are a real foster parent and a youth who has aged out of the system in Illinois. I actually had the experience to meet them a few months back. I felt like I was with some stars, but they're fantastic. So one of the things that you will note is the youth is older, but he is speaking about experiences he had when he was still in care. So although he looks like an adult young man, please remember that he is speaking about his own experiences when he was in care and sort of how he would have answered these questions back then. Okay. All right. Do we have to do something different to the videos to make more? All right. So this one is just like an example of how you would actually introduce the cans to a youth. We'll hope this works. Oh, where'd it go?
Jeremy, thanks so much for coming to meet with me today. I think, as you probably know, I got a call from your caseworker a couple weeks ago who said that based on her conversations with you, I think, and with your best friend's parents, where you're living now, that therapy may be a good idea. So the way I'm kind of seeing today is we're going to invite you in, we're going to talk, we're going to start talking today to see if indeed therapy would be a good idea. I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to do my best to kind of keep this as real as possible to go. So I want you to know up front, I have seen your file. I have talked to your caseworker. I haven't yet had a chance to talk to your parents because you are 21, and I wanted to make sure that before I reach out to any other adult in your life that's not a DCFS employee, that I had your permission. But my goal today is to begin to understand how things are going for you from your perspective. Because a lot of the times what I read in the paper is not necessarily totally accurate or totally what you're thinking about or what you're feeling. Does that okay to you? Do you have any questions before we get started today? No? Okay. I'd like to spend some time today talking about a bunch of different areas, and there's a number of ways we could do it. My goal, one of the goals that I'm going to have, one of my responsibilities, to be quite honest, is a tool, and it's called the Child and Adolescent Needs and Strengths. It's the CANS. It has a lot of items on it, and it covers a whole bunch of different areas. Instead of us having to go through every single item today, what I'd prefer to do is just keep it on the table with us. I'll put it here, and I'll reference it and introduce you to it a little bit more in a minute here. But I'd like more for us to just open it up to a natural conversation. So I know you don't know me, and I don't know you yet. So I'd like to start with whatever pieces you're willing to share with me today. We can get to all the different pieces over time, and hopefully that'll feel a little bit better than me beginning to ask you about some of the most difficult things that may have happened in your life today. What do you think?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay. Here's the one with a foster parent.
Yes, it's pretty lengthy, and we've been told that. It's about 110 items in here. And the reason that it is so long is that we want to make sure we're really getting a complete picture. And I think that's really important for us as we talk through what's going on with David and what's going on at home, but also so that we can kind of capture it in one place. So that's why we feel like this tool can be really helpful as we do it all in one place and try to make sense of where do we start when we start to develop together a treatment plan for working with David. Right. The other thing as far as the CANS, I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but one of the really unique things about the CANS is that we also want to know, as I said before, what's going well with David. So I'm sure you've already started to see how long has he been in your home now?
He's been in there about 2 months.
Okay, so you probably have picked up on some things that he really likes to do or that he does well. Even some areas that he may want to maybe excited about, things that he looks forward to. So those are the kinds of things that we want to tap into as far as what we're calling strengths. So things that are maybe unique to David, but also things within his environment, within your home, within the community that are really good for him and really helpful as he,
right.
Yeah.
So with both of those clips, I just would like to sort of summarize up some of the really good components of both of them. For the youth, they acknowledge that they have all this information. So they're not coming to the youth, tell me about yourself, I don't know anything about you. They're acknowledging, I have this stuff in a file, I've read it, I've talked to other people, but I want your perspective of how you're viewing what's going on in your life, and that's what I'm here to do today. And then with the foster parent, very similarly, they're not just talking about what's going on in her home, but how is he doing in the community? How does he do at school? It's really sort of setting that tone about the bigger picture for that child, that we're looking at not just how he acts for you, but tell us about him. Him or her. We really want to learn that. And we actually don't have a ton of time in between, and we want to make sure you guys see all the videos. So I'll just mention a few things here and there. And then at the end, hopefully there'll be time for some dialogue with everyone. Here is an example. So traumatic experiences, as you can imagine, are very difficult to talk about anyways. So here's just an example of how you might do it with a youth and talk with them. So where's Arrow go?
Okay, Jeremy, so far so good. I think we've gotten through actually the vast majority of what we refer to as the trauma or the really difficult kind of life experiences that people might have. I've just got a handful more to go. So far, we've got all of zeros, and if you remember what that means is things that you haven't experienced. Now, based on what I read in your file, I actually do know, or I believe I know, what I read is that you have had some of these other experiences that I'm about to ask you about. That said, it's really important for me to know from your perspective, not just what's written in the file. So I'm going to go ahead and ask about each one. As a group, what I'm referring to are things that we refer to generally as child abuse or neglect. And I'm going to ask you specifically about several different types of abuse. I'm going to ask about physical abuse. So if anyone has ever done anything physically towards you that harmed you in any way, I'm going to ask you about whether or not you've seen abuse happen between two people in your home, whether that be between siblings, from an adult to a sibling, or between two adults. I'm also going to ask you about sexual abuse, and that's if anyone has ever touched you in a way or behaved in a way or even talked to you in a way that was sexual in nature, especially when you were younger. So I'm not necessarily talking about things like girlfriends now. I'm talking more about inappropriate sexual behavior that happened between a child and an adult. Okay? All right. As we talk through his history, this happened to a lot of the different areas that may be areas of need for him. So one of the areas, when we think about trauma, some of the typical reactions are called traumatic stress symptoms. So you may have heard about PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder, and there's some common reactions that we often see both in adults and kids. But one of the things that we know about how kids react to trauma is that they could have some of those more common symptoms like nightmares, flashbacks, having memories of the trauma, or even kind of avoiding some of the reminders of the trauma. But that's only one way that kids react. Kids can react in all sorts of different ways to trauma. They could also have a lot of mental health symptoms like depression, anxiety, acting out at school, acting out at home. The kids have even some a little bit more challenging to handle for themselves and for you at home, like some of those risk kinds of behaviors. So there could be, a lot of physical acting out, maybe even some, problems with sexual acting out. So a lot of different kinds of symptoms and areas of need that we want to really keep in mind, not just focusing on one area.
So in both of those, you could see they were educating and they were really talking about trauma experiences or neglect or child abuse in more layman's terms, if you will, to help the participants really think of it in ways that they would know, not in a clinical sense, but in a sense of how day to day it actually plays out in their lives, or how it would make sense for them, and getting that feedback. But they also took it as an opportunity to really educate them a little bit about what it means to be outside of parameters or areas where we would be concerned about. And you'll see that more as we keep going with these clips.
Based on all of the things you were telling me as far as David's difficulty with anger, control, some of the outbursts that he tended to have, affect dysregulation is really meant to tap more broadly have problems regulating their emotions, whether it's anger or other kinds of emotions. And one of the things that I also noticed when I met with David was that, as you probably can imagine, he was, fairly closed off. He didn't really want to talk to me a lot. But I could tell when I said something that kind of bothered him or kind of ticked him off a little bit, he got a little bit reactive. You could tell that he kind of, went from whether 0 to 10 or 0 to 8 pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of thing that we're looking at when we're talking about affect regulation. And one of the things that we want to help kids do and help parents also tune into is how we can help kids regulate their emotions and monitor them, tune into what they are, and find really more positive or effective ways to deal with them.
That describes it.
That describes it. Okay, good. So I actually thought that maybe we should put that as a 2, because I feel like that captures a lot of what we were talking about as far as some of the other areas. Even some of the behavioral responses you were talking about may be triggered by some of his emotions. So
That could very well be, yes.
okay. So glad that makes sense to you. So Denise, I'm glad we've got some good treatment goals that we've mapped up together already. And so there's one more that I really want to come back to, because you mentioned it as far as working on David's self-esteem. And so one of the things we started to talk about were some of the areas of strength that it sounds like we need to build up. And some of that work actually we can do in session, but it's actually more important that we're on the same page, because that's the kind of stuff that, in your home, outside of the home, as far as some of the recreational activities we talked about, those things that I think would be really important for you to be involved in reinforcing and helping to build, because as you know, only so much can go on during the hour that we need every week.
Right, and I think as a foster parent, one of the things I'm trying to do is I'm trying to limit his watching of TV.
Right.
He's not very active because he's very obese because of his junk food and his eating habits. I'm trying to make him have better eating habits. And as far as sports, right now he's not interested in anything. I'm not going to push it, and I think it's his weight that's stopping him. So I think we're going to try going for a walk. Just take a walk up to the library. I mean, he has to find other things to do besides watching TV and eating junk food.
Right. So we started to talk about before, and I think those are all important things to keep in mind. And these are things that we started to talk about and put into some language around, how would we frame this? Just in finding ways to enhance his self-esteem, his self-concept, and building
his confidence.
Yep, that's great. And confidence, and I might even add his, feeling confidence in areas.
Exactly.
And that's where we can kind of, as you're getting to know David and exploring some different things with him, when you start to introduce him to sports or other recreational activities, just sort of figuring out what he feels connected to and what.
Correct.
Yes, all right. That sounds great. So one of the things, so I'm going to put that down as a goal in all of these, since we've got 4 good goals, I think, to start with. What I think I'll try to do, if it's okay with you, in between this time and the next time we meet, is to put them together in some sentences or language that makes sense, and then bring them back to you and have you take a look to make sure they fit.
That would be fine.
Okay,
I think that's
great.
a good idea.
So one of the things in this video that I find particularly interesting is the foster mom was saying, a lot of things like he's lazy, he doesn't want to do things, he doesn't want to join sports, he overeats, he's big, and all that. And Cassie really Tracy flips it in a perfect way. Because it's not about the child being lazy and overweight and all these things. It really has to do with the self-esteem of this child. And how do we, as a group of people working with this child, help this child build self-esteem, which will then probably take care of some of those other areas. And so I love how she flips it back. She doesn't say, oh my gosh, how could you say this about this child? She doesn't do that. She just very, very simply flips it and calls it back down to what the point of where the child is actually struggling is in self-esteem for the child. So look for those opportunities with people when people start going down the negative track. And I don't think the foster parent meant anything ill-intentioned by it, but that's how they were seeing it precipitated, with the child in their home. But, she did a really nice job of really calling it what it was, a low self-esteem for this child, and, okay, how do we build that for the child, and then coming together on even some of the things a foster parent would do would get at building the self-esteem, but, we weren't going to say the child's overweight and lazy and that's what the problem is. So I thought that was a really nice reframe.
Let me start maybe with the positive things that Diane and Jeff had to say about you.
Okay.
Needless to say, your best friend's parents are pretty impressed with who you are as a person. And hopefully you know that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay. So they started out by describing you as a good kid, somebody who makes them laugh, somebody who has a good heart. They described you as very smart as well, which is consistent with what I think I'm learning about you as well.
I would say that too.
Oh, good, good. There were also, though, a couple of areas that they were a little bit concerned about. And the thing is, the areas that they mentioned to me were mostly consistent with what you told me. But when you talk to parents, it's not unusual for them to feel even a little bit more worried than a youth themselves. So these are some of the scores that I switched up based on what they had to say. To be specific, one of the areas that they talked about, and I'm going to explain all of my notes here in a minute, but I just want to talk to you first a little bit. One of the areas was substance use. So you had mentioned to me that you are a social drinker and that you do use marijuana occasionally.
Right.
And I think you agreed to come back to talk about other types of recreational drug use potentially in the future. Just so you know, I didn't share any of that with Denise and Jeff. They brought it up on their own. And they described something to me, and I'm curious to know if you have the sense or not. What they said is that overall, you do a pretty good job of with judgment and making decisions, but that when you start to drink, that you seem to be missing like an off switch. So I know you hang out, you're best friends with their son, and they said that in their experience, teenagers and young adults drink for fun, they drink, but usually stop at some point. And that with you, they're concerned because of your family history maybe,
Right.
And everything you've been through, that it doesn't seem like you always know when to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not resulted in anything major happening yet,
Right.
and that you don't drink and drive, which they're really happy about. But that's an area that they said. So when you and I talked, I got a little, and so I think we put your substance abuse as a 1,
Right.
which was, just something to keep our eye on. And what I've done on this can, so we'll go back over, I'll highlight all the things that we put at 2s and 3s, which, by the way, you have no 3s, which just tells us you're not in severe shape in any way, okay? Everything, yeah, that is good. Everything we have to work on are their needs, the real needs, but they're not things that if we don't talk about or pay attention to right now, really risk something terrible happening.
Okay.
So substance use, let's see where this one is. Here we go, 58, yeah, you saw it before I did. So you can see that I had it on a 1, I erased it, and I went ahead and put it to a 2. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, all right.
So I think this is a nice example of even when people don't agree about things, or maybe one person is low, telling you minimal information, but you learn more, you come back to it, and it's something you discuss with the people involved in terms of where you're going to land, right? So, again, not everyone has to agree with you as the person who's scoring it, but it's good to tell people how you're seeing things when you have full vetting of information, especially if it's an area where maybe not everyone is in agreement about. And I think she also, again, took a nice opportunity for education of the youth, not saying, oh, you drink, therefore you must be addicted. She kind of talked about his switch, and that it seems like he doesn't have that switch like some people. And that seemed to even click with him, like, yeah, I don't seem to respond maybe the way my peers do. And even though he's not totally engaging, you can kind of see his body language changes, and he kind of looks up at her like maybe she's on to something. And I think he's a little more open to hearing what she's saying. Now we're going to see an example of how you can cluster different items together into a goal.
What they said, out all of the scores from the cans that came up as 2s.
Okay.
And I went ahead, since we're not looking at any 3s, and listed some of the scores from the cans that came out as 1s.
Mm-hmm.
I've written them down here in a way that seems to fit together for me,
Okay.
but please, please, please tell me if this doesn't make sense to you, and I'm super curious to know how else it might fit together. At the top, I have numbing, dissociation, affect dysregulation, and anger control, all kind of fitting together, because they all have to do with the ability to tune into your feelings, understand what you're experiencing, and then understanding how to regulate them in a moment in the way that makes the most sense. The next set, and we don't have any ones, to me, that seem like they fit there, but is that a logical way of putting them together? Not even logical. Does that make sense for you, for Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, try to figure out how to, like, appropriately react and emotions I should be experiencing, I guess. That's one of the things I want to try to figure out.
Okay, so you're already starting to write the goal. Let me write down exactly what you just said, because we're going to come to that. Over the last couple months, I know as we've been checking in, we've been talking a little bit about David's progress, and what I'm excited to show you today are some of how the results look on the can. So one of the things that I did, as I mentioned last week, is I went back, just based on our discussions, and I went ahead and finished completing the cans, because we talked about some of where we might see some of the initial scores go up and down, but what I wanted to do today is show you some of that feedback based on using kind of a visual example, because one of the things that we've heard from our other parents and other foster parents, that it's really helpful to see how things look, not just with numbers, but as far as, kind of a visual example. Right. So I'm going to show you some of our cans, we'll call our cans change reports, our graphs, and see how it looks to you. Okay. There should be no big surprises, but I think it'll be exciting to just see on paper how things are looking and what a great job you've done and what a great job David has done. Okay, that sounds good? Okay, sounds good. As you said, you see positive signs, and I think this is a good chance for me to show you, kind of what we've seen as far as the cans. And so I think you'll be happy to see that it's actually, you guys have made a lot of improvements. And I think, so let me just kind of point some of these things out to you in some of the areas that we talked. So if you remember, when we initially completed the cans, we talked about some of the more common traumatic stress symptoms that kids may have. And one of the big ones that you came in talking about in our first meeting, if you remember, was some of the re-experiencing symptoms that they had. And we also talked about some of the challenges when after I met with David and talked with you as well as his caseworker, some of the challenges around affect regulation. We also talked about some of the challenges that you're talking about in terms of more of the managing his behaviors, managing some of the acting out behaviors, some of the oppositional behaviors, some of his angry outbursts. And if you take a look at these graphs, the nice thing about these is it gives us a quick visual around what we see even in the last 3 months, Denise. And if you take a look, re-experiencing has gone almost down to nothing at this point, right? And if you jump over here, these are kind of laid out in terms of the different domains on the cans, but if you jump over here to some of the other behavioral problems you were noting before, the oppositional behavior and the anger control, right. You take a look, you go down from a 2 to a 1, and in terms of this, less than a 1. So we've seen some real improvement.
Positive improvement.
Which I think is really important for you to be proud of, and David to be proud of as well, because even in these initial 3 months, there's some things that are more long-term goals that we want to work on, but you've shown some signs of improvement.
Right, and I like the way the format is here with the graph.
Yeah.
Because it shows me where we started.
Right.
And where we're at right now.
All right, so usually at this point, people are like, well, how can I do that? So I'm going to turn it over to Jenny Weber, who's going to talk through how you can actually do this on your own.
Okay, so the history of the cans, there's kind of a few different components to this. So basically, you're just accessing any of the cans, and on the results tab, there's a link that says history of cans results. So that'll take you to another page, and it gives you basically every single can that has been documented for this child, whether it's an in-home cans or the out-of-home cans. And then you can look at a series of how these cans are. So there's a couple different options of looking at the results. There is all the cans, and then other options are looking at the current out-of-home care episode. And you can also look at the current placement. So basically looking at a specific foster parent or RCC or whichever type of placement. Or there's the option of kind of customizing it. And then based on the time frame, you can specify what types of items you're looking at. So if it's specific domains or all the domains, or if you want to kind of narrow it down to the level of need, you can do that as well. So kind of for purposes of what I'm going to show you here, I've just selected all of them. I'll just show you a couple graphs for them. And then the bottom section just goes through every single can that's been documented and then identifies who the caregiver is. So if it's in this particular example with an RCC. And then it also looks at the child's age. Then when we come to the graph, you'll kind of see differences between the two. So here I have one of the birth to 5 cans, birth to 5 cans, and then the rest are in another color. So you'll see this example here is the level of need. So you'll see kind of it going up and down. And again, it's taking the results of all the cans that you identified, saying, you know, how did this youth do or this child do? Did it go up? Did it go down? And then there's other components to it that there's a data, which I'll put the data points on the particular graph. And then there's a data table down below that goes through each of the items as well. So again, it's over a period of time or a specific provider, an episode, and then like it goes on to the next graph for the needs. So each graph individually.
And can you just explain? You can do it by domain.
Yeah, so
you don't have to do it at just level of need.
Right. I kind of had selected each of these items here, so and just showed you the first two there. So it had the level of need and then the needs, but you can specify specific domain, and then you'll get that particular graph. There's options to print. This print history will print kind of each of these cans here. The print on here will print all of those that you've identified. So you kind of alter your search results, and you'll get different components.
So I'm sure, because I've shown these videos in other child welfare arenas, that you're thinking, oh, I would like a younger kid. I would like to see a child who's maybe not as compliant, or someone who maybe disagrees more. And what I would say to that is, hang on, your wishes will come true. Northwestern is working on such videos with us and with the other state partners, because they are taking that feedback, and we're hoping we can share those with you once we get those as well. So I hope everyone, go ahead.
How do we access the videos?
So right now you can access these videos, and I'm going to try to pull it up right now. So I'm going to just walk you right through it. It is what I thought. So it's cctasp.northwestern.edu. It's going to take a little second to give you there. If you go under resources and products, whole bunch of trauma resources, and we're going to do some presentations with some of these other ones, but the one that we're doing today is this third one down. It does take a while to load on your computer, and to see the videos, you have to put it in PowerPoint mode and be in the slide for it to work. We will be showing some of these other ones in future ones, but if you're interested, while I have your attention, there are other video short clips about different items that you may find helpful. They're like 1 to 2 minutes, so they're really short. But if you're struggling on, scoring a particular item, and right now they just have the trauma experiences and the symptoms are the two that they have up there. Wow. Was there a question out there? Okay. Well, thank you for your participation today. We hope you join us and join another month. Thanks.